Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome back to another Mortal Kombat 11 video. Now today I wanted to make a video regarding the future of Mortal Kombat 11, as well as the chances of who exactly the main villain of the game will be, because there has been ideas floating around with what we can really see in the game. So for this video I've decided to take the hints we've had through Mortal Kombat X, the Mortal Kombat X comics, as well as the fact that the new timeline does have a lot of callbacks to the original timeline, so this may give us an idea of who will be the main antagonist of this game. Now I will be using characters that have been hinted at and one that has a lot of foreshadowing surrounding them, as it will allow me to create a much more accurate depiction of what we can see. So on that note, let's actually start talking about characters who've been hinted at to be the main antagonist. Now the first one should be quite obvious, as he did turn from a good guy to a bad guy in the original timeline and has seemed to have taken a much more aggressive stance on how he protects his realm, Raiden. Now how exactly did we get to this point? Why is Earthrealm's Guardian being painted as a villain? Well, for those of you who aren't too familiar with Mortal Kombat X's story mode, during the climax of the game, the fallen elder god known as Shinnok used dark magic to corrupt the Jinsei, and upon his defeat, Raiden was forced to take in all of this dark energy into himself, which in turn corrupted him, transforming the somewhat passive Guardian into what can only be deemed as an aggressive god, which fun fact is actually very different from the original timeline. You see, at the end of Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, after many of Earthrealm's heroes are killed, Raiden is forced to battle Quan Chi and Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat, to which he is overpowered and defeated. Now before he can be executed by the duo, the Dragon King Onaga is revived and attacks the trio. Now with no other choice, Raiden is forced to sacrifice his life with the hopes of killing Onaga and destroying the Dragon army, but his efforts are in vain. Now despite somewhat sacrificing his life, he does re-emerge back out in Outworld, but due to his altercation with Onaga, when he returns back to his complete form, he's revived in a dark and corrupted form. Much like the new timeline version of Raiden, takes on a much more aggressive stance on how they protect their home. Now the reason why I do mention this is because I feel like the whole Dark Raiden arc is something that was going to inevitably happen, albeit happening a lot sooner than I think a lot of us were expecting. So I feel like Raiden transforming into a villain was something that was always kind of paved in stone. What else do we have here that kind of helps solidify my point? Well, outside of what we see after the credits in Mortal Kombat X, we do have to take into account arcade ladder endings. Now not every single one of these do come to fruition, but a lot of them do foreshadow what we can see in the future. And in multiple different character endings, we see Raiden and the Shira Ryu wage war against Outworld. Now if this hint was only in one arcade ladder ending, you could take it with a grain of salt. However, it's featured multiple times here, so it's clearly building up to something quite big, meaning that this is most likely the main new big story arc in the game, which is quite a change from what we've normally had, as before we've been following the same format from Mortal Kombat 1 up to Mortal Kombat 4. And what I mean by this is that in Mortal Kombat 9, it was basically a mash of Mortal Kombat 1, 2 and 3, and MKX is basically the new timeline version of Mortal Kombat 4, as the timeline is clearly following some of the similar steps. So it does really interest me that it does seem like they're going in a different direction, as Dark Raiden himself never actually got his own story arc, existing only in the original timeline as a subplot. Now to help somewhat propel the popularity of this character, he was also featured in Injustice 2, and I believe he was only put in here to help propel Mortal Kombat 11. And I know that does seem fairly obvious, as a lot of guest characters that do feature in NRS games are solely put there to help promote their other product counterpart. But I believe for Injustice 2, he was put in there to help elevate his character status, because although Raiden's definitely a face that can be recognized by fans, he definitely wasn't one that kind of reached the popularity of say Sub-Zero or Scorpion. So I believe that this was also done as a clever marketing tactic to help elevate the character status and push him out there so he can appeal to some comic book fans to draw them into Mortal Kombat 11. Now some of you may think this is far-fetched, but remember, this is all actually a business, which makes a lot of money. So I'll let you ultimately determine your own judgment for what you think about his inclusion in Injustice 2 was for. Now I believe that it's fairly safe to say that Dark Raiden will be the main antagonist of this game. But what does interest me the most is how he's going to function as a villain, because he's seeming to work very different from his other Dark Raiden timeline counterpart, where instead of just being outright evil, he seems to be taking more of a protective stance, one where he'll only outright attack people if they pose a threat to his home, which is something, like I said, we do see in the arcade ladder endings, as before Kotal Khan took over Melina's role, Shao Kahn continuously attacked Earthrealm relentlessly, even going so far to break the rules of Mortal Kombat to get his own way. So naturally it seemed like Raiden would go after Outworld, as the two realms do have history. What makes it very interesting about this narrative is that in Raiden's eyes he isn't the bad guy, whereas from everyone else's perspective it can be seen as either overprotective or outright evil, evil, especially if you're someone from Outworld. But what does have me curious is that although he may act like the main villain, is he gonna have like a super form, much like Shinnok did in MKX? Because Mortal Kombat ladder bosses do have a tendency to be like really crazy, so I'm interested with what they do here, which does lead up to the possibility of there being a much larger villain, who is someone I will get onto later. But yes, I do feel like for the most part, Raiden will be the antagonist for a large majority of the story. But now let's explore the other villains and possibilities we do have here. And one that was also foreshadowed alongside Dark Raiden is the seemingly new deadly alliance made up of Liu Kang and Kitana, which is a massive twist from what we see in the original timeline, as the two were seen as the heroic couple of the series. Now for those of you who don't really know everything that's been going on with Kitana and Liu Kang, the two individuals were killed off in Mortal Kombat 9, Kitana being killed by her mother, and Liu Kang accidentally being killed by Raiden. The two would then be brought back from the dead by Quan Chi and work as his revenant servants to fulfill his desires of reviving Shinnok. Now in MKX they are successful, but much like I mentioned earlier, Shinnok is defeated. And upon this, it seems like the revenants now have free will of their own. So Kitana and Liu Kang would have their eyes set on the Netherrealm, as it was absent from Quan Chi and Shinnok, and assert their dominance there, becoming the new emperor and empress of this somewhat hellish world. But how exactly could they fit into the villainous role? Well, that's something we don't exactly quite know, because for the most part there's been a lot of foreshadowing for Raiden, but outside of this there are plot threads that still aren't tied up. One in particular is the Jade plot thread. For those of you who are curious, Jade was the only revenant we didn't see resurface in Mortal Kombat X, which was in many cases weird, as she wasn't even directly referenced to at all by Quan Chi or any of the revenants, so her disappearance right now is a mystery. And the only time we do see her in X is in Kitana's ending, where she's seemingly reaching out to her friend who hates her own revenant form. So this may be some form of symbolism for what we can see in MK11, with Jade returning to somewhat save her friend, because back in MK9 in her arcade ladder ending, she seemingly came into contact with a mysterious individual that brought her back from the dead. So this said individual may be the main reason why we don't see Jade appear as a revenant in MKX. Plus we do need some form of resolution to the revenant plot thread, as that in itself has been going on for 2 games now, and no doubt in my mind, many fans want their favourite characters to return back to their normal human form. So Jade could come into direct conflict with the Netherrealm, as the revenants by nature are kind of evil. Now as for how big of a role this will actually play in the main story, is something we have to wait and see, but I do suspect that this will most likely be a subplot, as there has been heavy emphasis on Raiden being the main villain. So if these two plots were kind of going to work alongside each other, then it may end up clashing with the main plot and taking away how much importance and build up there's been. But as villain plot arcs go, that's most likely the thing we'll see from Kitana and Liu Kang, since Quan Chi and Shang Tsung are dead, and in terms of where we are in the original timeline, we are where Deadly Alliance is supposed to happen. So although it may not be made up of Quan Chi and Shang Tsung, we may see it happen with Liu Kang and Kitana. Now one character that's had some foreshadowing going on around him is the Dragon King Onaga, and the reason I say this is because in the MKX comics, there's been some foreshadowing that Goro will in fact become the new host, which would be a very interesting way of reinventing a character. Now recently there's also been a debate about whether or not the Mortal Kombat X comics are canon or not, but as I've said before, it has Mortal Kombat X on the tin, and until we have a writer officially come out and say that it's non-canon, I'll be using it as a way of predicting what we can see in the future here. Now we don't know whether or not Mortal Kombat 11 will in fact be a mash of Deadly Alliance and Deception, or even just a standalone game, but one thing is for sure, and that is Onaga is a massive fan favourite, one that undeniably is a very interesting boss that unfortunately wasn't executed extremely well in the original timeline. So if Deadly Alliance and Deception on the horizon, this would be a great opportunity to re-establish the character and have him return. Now the reason I've left him to last is because there's a lot of flaws with this idea. For one, you need to read the Mortal Kombat X comics to know where the foreshadowing comes from. 2, the comics aren't always consistent with the canon. And 3, it may take away the danger factor that Raiden has at this point if Onaga does turn up out of nowhere and does steal the limelight from him. But the one benefit it does give us is yes, Onaga's return, the really cool idea of Goro being the new host for Onaga, and the fact that we would have a big body boss, which is something I did mention during the Raiden section, which I was worried about, as I wouldn't want them to use the corrupted Shinnok boss twice. So there's definitely pros and cons to this actually happening. I wouldn't say the likelihood of Onaga is extremely high, but it does seem to be something that's on the table. So I'm interested as to how they're going to be able to juggle these stories if they are implemented. But yeah, that for the most part does wrap up the video, guys. I hope you've all enjoyed it, as the individuals I've mentioned here are being hinted at to be the main villains of the next game. So I'm interested how things will turn out in terms of execution. That's not to say that there aren't other people who can in fact make this list, but it's just that everyone who I've featured here are the ones who most likely be pushed to the forefront as the main villain of this particular game. But yeah, that kind of does wrap it up for this video, guys. I do hope you've enjoyed it, and I want to say thank you to everyone again for all the support on the Mortal Kombat videos. As you can tell, I'm clearly enjoying coming back home and putting out some content that you guys really do enjoy. So definitely expect to see more stuff like this from me in the future. And in saying that, this Thursday, I plan on doing a what's the difference video between the old Sub-Zero and the new Sub-Zero, since you guys clearly enjoyed the last two. So this will now become an official series on my channel that will come out on a weekly basis. So if you are interested in that, take a look on Thursday and see whether or not you do like it. And on top of that, before I finally do wrap up this video, I just want to let you all know that we're streaming God of War 4 this weekend. So if you're hyped for that game like I am, please come by the Twitch channel on Friday so we can hang out, chat, and experience this fantastic game together. But yeah, that's kind of it for this video. Now before it wraps up, guys, if possible, let's try getting it to about 500 likes. As a great way of helping out this channel since YouTube's ad system is broken as hell. So by giving it a thumbs up, it helps out a ton. And if you want to go that extra step, we also have a Patreon set up, and a link for that will be down in the description below. Anyway guys, as always, please comment, like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. Please take care, and I'll see you all next time.